The head of the most powerful group in the rebel alliance, now in control in Syria, has told the BBC the country is exhausted by war and isn't a threat to its neighbours or the West. Ahmed al-Sharaa led the lightning offensive that toppled President Bashar al-Assad less than 2 weeks ago. He's the leader of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, group of rebels. In recent days, he's been trying to allay fears a new government might restrict the rights of women. And he says the group is no longer linked to al-Qaeda. Many Syrians, however, are sceptical. Well, Ahmed al-Sharaa has been speaking to Jeremy Bowen, who's live for us tonight in Damascus. Jeremy.
Thanks very much, Clive. Well, Ahmed al-Sharaa has a long history as a jihadist fighter and, in fact, as a senior leader going back to the insurgency against the Americans in Iraq 20-odd years ago. So he has form. He says he has changed, breaking with al-Qaeda in 2016, and he presents his organization as an Islamist group, but nationalist and tolerant of Syria's other sects, other faiths. So people, though, as we've been hearing, are sceptical about all of that. Now, to talk to the BBC, he invited us, in fact, to one of the symbols of the old regime. The de facto leader of Syria, Ahmed al-Sharaa, chose to do the interview in the presidential palace built by the Assads. He told me he wasn't surprised that the old regime collapsed so quickly. Syrians, he said, needed to keep calm, to tackle all the problems they face. You've made a lot of promises. You said that you'll respect the mosaic of different sectarian groups here in Syria, minorities as well. Are you going to keep those promises?
The Syrian population has lived together for thousands of years. We're going to discuss all of it. We're going to have dialogue and make sure everyone is represented. The old regime always played on sectarian divisions, but we won't. We were welcomed in all the big cities by all the sects. I think the revolution can contain everybody.
So this isn't going to be some kind of a caliphate, or you're not going to make Syria into a country like Afghanistan, because you know that there are people who say that maybe you want to behave like the Taliban.
There are many differences between Syria and the Taliban. The way we govern is different. Afghanistan is a tribal community. Syria is completely different. The people just don't think in the same way. The Syrian government and the ruling system will be in line with Syria's history and culture.
So the culture of Syria includes rights for women, it includes education for women, it includes tolerance for people drinking alcohol. Is that all acceptable to you?
When it comes to women's education, of course. We've had universities in Idlib for more than 8 years. I think the percentage of women in universities is more than 60%.
And alcohol?
There are many things I just don't have the right to talk about, because they are legal issues. There will be a Syrian committee of legal experts to write a constitution. They will decide, and any ruler or president will have to follow the law.
Let's talk about wider issues that you face. First of all, this country is broken. There is massive amount of destruction. The economy is destroyed. There are huge debts. How do you begin to start dealing with all of that when the country's under sanctions and when major powers around the world and the United Nations say that you are the leader of a terrorist group?
That's a political classification. We haven't committed any crimes that justify calling us a terrorist group. In the last 14 years, we haven't targeted any civilians or civilian areas or civilian targets. I understand some countries will be worried by that designation, but it's not true. Now, after all that has happened, sanctions must be lifted because they were targeted at the old regime. The victim and the oppressor should not be treated in the same way.